Love it or hate it, influencers and non-boxers are dominating the boxing industry. Recent times have shown us that boxing is a whole different world now to what it was years ago, with more and more people now, rather than watching sanctioned professional boxing, choosing to tune into the so-called mockery of the sport, influencer boxing. Along with influencer boxing, crossover boxing matches, mostly between MMA fighters and boxers, have also ascended into the mainstream, with the most recent and arguably the most legit one being the matchup between the world heavyweight boxing champion, Tyson Fury, and former UFC heavyweight champion, Francis Ngannou. In this video, we'll take a look at why influencer boxers and those with almost zero previous boxing experience are currently dominating the industry. With corruption and the rising competitor of MMA playing a significant role in driving the cart away from the gold mine, the boxing industry just isn't what it used to be years ago. With factors such as corruption, padded records, and influencer boxing, the legitimacy of boxing has been questioned time and time again, with some considering that these problems are causing the destruction of the sport. However, some argue that crossovers and influencer boxing are reviving what is an apparent declining sport. But when you have the legit professional boxers being left behind to promote the West's rising trash talk and rivalry show style, a problem occurs to those that appreciate boxing for the sport itself and not outside factors or dramatic buildup. With all the money and hype this phenomenon has generated and continues to do so, we wonder, how did all this influencer and crossover stuff come about, and why is everyone tuning in? The history of influencer YouTube boxing can be traced back to 2017, when British YouTubers Joe Weller and Theo Baker had the first ever YouTube boxing match, attracting millions of views. This sparked interest among other YouTubers, including KSI, who challenged Joe Weller in 2018. The KSI versus Joe Weller match was the first major YouTube boxing event, with KSI winning by TKO in the third round. The next major event was between the Olatunji brothers, KSI and Deji, and the Paul brothers, Logan and Jake. The first KSI versus Logan Paul fight and the Jake Paul versus Deji fight were held on the same day in August 2018, breaking records for the most watched amateur boxing match. Jake Paul won his match, while the KSI versus Logan Paul fight ended in a draw, leading to a rematch in 2019. The second KSI versus Logan Paul fight was a professional match held in November 2019. KSI won by split decision, becoming the first YouTuber to win a professional boxing match. However, Jake Paul, who had continued his boxing career, challenged KSI's reign. Jake Paul had his first professional fight in January 2020 against Annie Songib, winning by TKO. Although a fight between Jake Paul and KSI was hyped, it has not materialized to this day but is still on the path. After the first era of influencer boxing was finished, KSI took some time off of boxing to focus on other things such as his music. Whilst KSI took his focus off boxing momentarily, Jake Paul, who is now a serious problem in boxing, hence the name Problem Child, would be the one to bring the real fighters and crossover events into the mix. Paul, after knocking out Nate Robinson in his next fight, would begin calling out MMA fighters, causing many to think he is crazy and playing with fire, and that he would be knocked out and have his ego cracked, since these were real fighters he was calling out, and not just some YouTuber or NBA player. However, against all odds, he would go on a path of domination that still paves to this day, making a joke of MMA fighters. Paul would end up showcasing fierce knockout power on what looks almost like test subjects, but in reality, legit fighters from the UFC. Today, when we look at Jake's resume, wins and knockouts over names such as Tyron Woodley and Ben Askren appear, along with great paydays and tons of hype. He has been able to dominate the boxing scene by using his fame, charisma, and skills to create hype, attract attention, and win fights by choosing his opponents carefully and logically. Jake Paul has managed to go beyond the influencer boxing scene and do crossover fights, something rarely seen, which is why he is one of the dominators of the influencer boxing scene, so much that now some even consider him a legit boxer, and not just some YouTuber. The Misfits series, broadcasted by Tyson, is another reason why this stuff shines in the industry. The creation of Misfits boxing has got to be one of the best things done for influencer boxing. Instead of pro boxing's multiple sanctioning bodies and championships, Misfits is the premier for influencer boxing, making it easy to follow and understand, similar to why the UFC and MMA has overtaken professional boxing. The fans have gotten fed up trying to keep up with boxing's overload of belts and confusion. Since boxing is arguably a little harder to follow for casual fans, influencer boxing and Misfits draws a lot of them in, since influencers are promoting their fight like crazy, and they are mainstream names that source their following from other things other than boxing, such as KSI's massive YouTube following, and even his Prime drink. You know what they say about combat sports in the West. It's not just about how good you are, but also how much of a show you can sell, and entertainment is what influencers do best. However, along with the heated trash talk comes unpredictability, especially in these crossover events such as Ngannou versus Fury, which we'll get to soon. The problem with boxing these days is that it's too predictable, since boxers and promoters are terrified of losing their O, which is so precious these days, leading to padded records and fighters ducking each other. This means that we don't really get to see highly anticipated matchups, and instead, we get blowouts where some boxers are paid to be fed to an up-and-coming hype train. However, what isn't predictable is influencer and crossover boxing. Two influencers going up against each other is really hard to predict, as really, some of them just have the skill of the average guy. But also, since they're influencers, they can sell the fight very well with their trash-talking antics and entertainment. When we look at crossover boxing, the skill level is a lot higher and is also unpredictable, since you will have one guy who's a killer MMA fighter, but the other who's also a killer of a boxer, or maybe less skilled, but it's their home ground. It really depends on the MMA fighter's style, though. For example, we recently had Dillon Danis versus Logan Paul, which turned out to be an absolute disaster. However, the fight was anticipated very highly, with Danis going extreme with the trash talk building more and more anticipation to what turned out to be an absolute mismatch. MMA fighters don't always have good striking, as evidenced by Danis's poor boxing, since his MMA style is heavily dedicated to jiu-jitsu. In the recent battle that was billed as the Battle of the Baddest, boxing's WBC World Heavyweight Champion, Tyson Fury, took on former UFC heavyweight champion, Francis Ngannou. This crossover fight was definitely one of the more professional ones, with high anticipation. This bout drew attention as Ngannou wasn't just going up against Fury, but also UFC president Dana White. The boxing newcomer, Ngannou was destined to prove UFC president Dana White wrong and earn himself what he didn't get in the UFC, a big paycheck and freedom, which he surely did. Ngannou proved both Dana and the world wrong when he knocked down the Gypsy King in the third round, sending him down to the canvas in front of the world. The two fought to the final bell, where Fury ended up with the victory by split decision. However, this decision raised many eyebrows, with many even claiming that Ngannou was unfairly robbed and that the win was only given to Fury in order to protect the sport of boxing. Not only did this fight strike a blow to Fury, but also boxing as a whole. If an MMA fighter like Ngannou was able to come over to boxing and in some eyes beat one of the greatest heavyweights of all time, the legitimacy of boxing has to be questioned. Does boxing need to be fixed? Are influencers and crossovers good or bad for boxing? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to never miss another video like this.